Welcome to the channel. I have found a nice interesting box hiding deep in the dark corner. And what it is, I loaded this back in 2014, literally 9 years and a day ago, and it's still here. And if we have a look at it, we got a nice round nose head for the 260 Remington. Here it is. And I've even gone so far as to mark the top with a bit of lacquer so I wouldn't confuse this round with anything else. These rounds are subsonic. These will fly once we shoot them out of the gun, less than the speed of sound. These particular rounds I chronoed, they'll go at about 1,088 feet per second on average. Now, subsonic means that we won't have sonic boom as they'll travel down the range. And so when these things fly over your head as a marker, you basically just hear woof. And if you combine that then with a can, then you'll have very almost no noise at all. Subsonic loads, they're also often called in reloading data reduced loads. They're great for reduced recoil. So when you have somebody starting out fresh and shooting, then there's an argument for giving them a load which is, just very much on the soft side. I mean, this when you shoot this with this ammo, there's almost no recoil. The other advantage you have is that you're taking away a lot of the kinetic energy that your bullet carries with it, and so there's an argument for shooting this in ranges where you normally couldn't shoot a full bore rifle because. All of a sudden you can say, but my load only does, whatever, and that'll be under the load limit so many joules, and that'll hopefully be under the limit that the range has as maximum, and all of a sudden you can shoot this in places. The trouble is, this ammo is still here. It just doesn't work. It's just not worth the bother. The downsides are massive, and right out of the box, I mean, yes, it's quiet, okay, but it's also terribly inaccurate. At 200 yards, and 200 yards, I don't really shoot less than that. With a gun this big, look how huge this thing is, it's massive. And you can't even hit the football at 200 yards, you have problems. This guy here, I've dug through, I found an old article that I had at the time, load development. He gives some data for a number of rounds, and he'll say, 2-inch accuracy, or an inch accuracy, or an inch and a half. Yes, at 50 yards. 50 yards. That's like 25 as far away as the length of this gun. You don't need a huge tool like this to get to 25, to go to 50 yards. You can throw a stone 50 yards, can't you? So the cost is high. Fundamentally, you can say, yes, but it's still subsonic and I can go varminting or whatever. Yes, you can do that. But if you have a subsonic 223, well, then you effectively have a rimfire. And whatever energy you pump out of here, you can achieve that with a 45 ACP. 45 ACP will have no problem at all going 200 yards. It'll have a heavier head than anything I can get out of this. And it'll be designed to be a subsonic round straight out of the box. So you don't need a huge rifle like this. You can have a little carbine. It'll do much better job than this thing will. And so, in effect, the subsonic rifle ammunition basically neuters your gun. You have a massive tool that's designed to throw something out at 3 times the speed of sound, and instead you're throwing it out there at not even the speed of sound. So your accuracy drops through the floor because instead of the bullet flying sharp for the first 200-300 yards in almost a straight line, maybe like an inch or two dip, you're dropping like a stone. And if the target is 2 or 3 meters further back or forward, you'll see a difference in the accuracy that you're getting. Next argument is the recoil. Well, you have that, but you can have a lower recoil if you shoot a different gun. You don't need to work up a whole load to get less recoil on this. And the reduced energy argument, well, to some extent that also falls straight out of the window. Because imagine I take this and I rock up at a pistol range somewhere, and the guy says, we only safe for pistols. And I say, don't worry, look what I did. Trust me, it'll be fine, and worst case I get it wrong and I shoot straight through your backstop. No one's going to let a rifle like this onto a dedicated pistol range. If you've ever RCO'd a pistol range and somebody shows up with a 45-70 government and says, don't worry, I've low-loaded it, I'm not going to let him shoot. Why on earth would I? It's not even about what your ammunition does. It's what the gun that can do. If he picks up the wrong round or whatever, suddenly you have a hole in the backstop. It's mad. So the arguments for shooting subsonic rifle ammunition, I don't see where they are. that said, I'm not trying to put you off. I mean, I went down this path. Look, I've got my old load data here, and I'm actually going to read it out to you. So what I've got, if you're still watching this far, then I assume you're here for that. So the speed of sound is 1,125 feet per second. I'll start off with my 223 subsonic load, which I did with a 77 grain SMK. You want as heavy a head as you can find, because the heavier the head, the more kinetic energy you have in that head. And so a heavy head, ironically, will fly further than a lighter head if you throw it out at the same speed. So 77 grain Sierra Match King was the heaviest head I had at the time, and I loaded it with Trail Boss. Here it is. Trail Boss, I have to quickly say, there's a whole recipe out there with which you can load just about every ammunition going. You can find that online. I'll put a link into it. And I used 5.7 grain of Trail Boss, and with no pressure or keyholing, and I got 1,120, 1,115, 1,024 feet per second for that load. With a 260, also with a can, I initially used 140 grain SMK with 11.3 grain of Trail Boss. Again, no pressure, good seal, and again, no keyholing. I hasten to add that both the 223 and the 260 have a high twist rate in the barrel. If you have like a 1 in 12, I wouldn't even bother trying to attempt this. I think this is a 1 in 7.6 or something like that. And my 223 is like a 1 in 7, I think. So I have really high twist rate. For the 260 with 140 grain SMK, I used 11.3 grains, and that produced 1,058, 1,058, and 1,072 feet per second. And for lastly, these rounds you have here, which was the pinnacle of my evolution, which I've never fired after I loaded them all lovingly. That's also 260 Subsonic with can, and that's 160 grain round nose with 11.3 grains of Trail Boss, and that works out about 1,088 feet per second. So, if you want to have a go at loading subsonic rifle ammunition, I think by all means, I think it's great fun. You should have a go. You know, I mean, maybe there's an angle that I've overlooked, and there's a certain sense of achievement in coming up with something. Is just don't do what I do. Don't load 50 of them in the expectation that you'll ever use them. So, I hope that was interesting, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.